With the release of the version 2.1 ARCHON quest, we finally got some brand spanking new intel, and boy, my theory crafting heart is on fire! In all seriousness though, I actually have mixed feelings on the quest as a whole and very mixed opinions on the ELECTRO ARCHON. But that's not what we're all here for today. Today, we're going to be going over every claim I made in these previous videos to see what I got right and where I was way off track. Now, of all the claims I made in these videos, 27 of them were addressed within the version 2.1 ARCHON quest. How many were correct? Well, stick around to find out. Now, I think it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. If you have not completed the version 2.1 ARCHON quest, do not watch this video. Add it to your watch later list, bookmark it. I don't know, just set it aside until you can make it to the end of the quest yourself. This video is basically one giant spoiler, so yeah, spoiler warning. It's the only one you're getting. And without further ado, let's begin. First up, let's talk about MIKO. Now, I made 4 claims about her in previous videos, and of those 4, all of them were correct. MIKO wasn't suspicious at all, and she did end up being like Ningguang for me. Super suspicious at first glance, but ultimately the one that provides the most genuine help throughout the entire quest. I mean, let's be real. The entire second half was just us running errands for Miko's grand plan to yoink A out of her room. MIKO was also the one to save us from SCARAMOUCHE, and she handed over the Gnosis in order to do it. There was a lot of initial speculation around MIKO being the real ELECTRO ARCHON, and that she was the one possessing the Raiden Shogun, but that turned out to not be the case at all. I think I theorized that MIKO was being used to quell the Archon's anxiety, but wasn't controlling her directly. That's half true. MIKO is kind of an emotional support for A, but not through possession. I mean, look how cute Widow MIKO is. Just look at her. Oh, so cute. Anyway, a couple of neat factoids though before we move on. MIKO is indeed around 500 years old and was never the ELECTRO ARCHON. She's also definitely not the statue in the center of town, although it's possible that the statue in Rito of the Fox with the Thunder Drums is referring to her, or Saigyu, one of them. Also fun to note that MIKO appears to be a fennec fox as opposed to a red fox, hence the large downturned ears. Just thought that was a neat little detail. Ah, yes, Kokomi. Kokomi's role in the Archon quest was honestly a little disappointing, so I hope there's a lot more to come from her in future updates. Until that time, I made 3 claims that were addressed during the quest, and another 4 more that are still up in the air. All 3 of the ones that were addressed were correct. Kind of. Initially, I had stated that Kokomi and Orobashi had some sort of beef with Ball that served as the catalyst of the Vision Hunt decree. This is only half true. Orobashi does have a bad history with the ELECTRO ARCHON since her friend Sasayuri died in the battle against him, but that wasn't the reason for the decree. Actually, we learned during this quest that the ELECTRO ARCHON wasn't really into the whole Vision Hunt decree to begin with, and that was all just a Fatui thing. But on the other hand, the Fatui were utilizing Orobashi's remains to create delusions, and the Vision Hunt decree was part of their plan overall, so I'm gonna give myself half a point for that one. I'm a little annoyed, too, that the whole accelerated aging thing turned out to just be a side effect of the delusions, because the myth about the box of time is actually really cool, and I'd love to look into it in more detail later on. But on one hand, I was right about Orobashi being the source of the aging because it's his Archon residue being used to manufacture the things that cause it. But on the other hand, the things that cause it are delusions and not at all related to Kokomi and potentially like a box of time or a mythical jellyfish or anything like that. So I'll take half a point for this one as well. But I'll take a full point for accurately predicting that the purple fog in the delusion factory was Archon residue. Cool beans. I cannot tell you how many comments I got after my ball analysis video telling me that Senora was the lady with the heart on the Fatui constellation wheel, and not the moth. But I was the victor of that argument. Senora is the moth constellation and the Crimson Witch of Flames. I want to be very clear right now that this was not my theory originally, but one that I had seen floating around for a few months after the release of the Pale Flame set, way back when. And I just believed that it was true because it just made sense. So I'll take the point for this one, but not the credit for the original theory itself. Now, if you are interested in learning more about Senora and her backstory, since we weren't able to do so during the quest itself, which is really unfortunate, I highly recommend this video by Chill with Aster, as she does a really nice analysis on the Crimson Witch of Flames and Senora. Scaramouche, Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? And yes, he will. Eventually. Now, I think this is the theory that got the most attention out of all of them because it seemed like such a massive stretch at the time to most people. I honestly didn't think we'd get such explicit confirmation on the nature of Scaramouche's connection to the Electro Archon here, but we did. So 1 point for me for predicting that Scaramouche is a failed Exuvia of the Electro Archon. Granted, they call him a prototype puppet, but the implications are pretty much the same. This is also confirmation that Scaramouche is the Harbinger spoken about on the Surpassing Cup in the Pale Flame set. And while we didn't get to see his constellation yet, there's a very good chance that he's the puppet with the heart on the Fatui constellation wheel. That's pretty darn cool. What's less cool is that I thought he'd be the primary puppeteer behind everything in Inazuma, when he wasn't. He's just a bystander. And why is the one Harbinger that's from Inazuma not the one that's pulling all the strings within Inazuma? It's just super weird. But you know, after finishing the quest and learning that Scaramouche was picked up by the Fatui and experimented on by an eccentric genius, I can't help but wonder if that genius was Dottore. The guy already has a penchant for working with machinery, and as far as we can tell, was responsible for injecting Colette with the Archon residue that resulted in her giant venom snake thingy. I'm curious whether or not Dottore got the idea for this after experimenting on the Archon puppet, since this latest batch of delusions are being made from the bone marrow and the malice of the giant snake from Scaramouche's homeland. It's really coincidental. And if you have no idea who I'm talking about, you might want to go to the Genshin website and read the comic that they have there, the official comic. It'll explain everything. It's actually pretty good, but it's missing a few chapters at the end. I'll leave a link. Anyway, I also won't rant about it here, but does anyone else find it really weird that delusions were originally a rare and exclusive object gifted to high-ranking Fatui and Harbingers? But now they're just being mass-produced and hand out to anybody? So, Scaramouche was helping spread delusions around, and that's what led to the Vision Hunt decree. I think it's then really weird that Zhongli had outright stated that Inazuma was closed because the Electro Archon believed that visions should remain in the control of the divine, when that ended up not being the case at all. A just kind of goes along with the Vision Hunt decree because she sees no conflict between it and her pursuit of eternity. It was, after all, just a Fatui plot. I'll take half a point for this one, since it was specifically the Fatui that closed the country because they wanted to collect visions and spread delusions independently of the Electro Archon. But I can't help but feel like this is a bit of a retcon on MiHoYo's part. It just doesn't line up with what's been said previously, but I'll let it slide for now. Zhongli also said that his death would put pressure on the Electro Archon, and I didn't see any indication that that was the case. I can't even remember if she even knew about his passing. So no point for me here, I guess. Again, kind of feels like a retcon cop-out, but whatever. But given that the Vision Hunt decree was a Fatui thing and not the result of anything the Electro Archon actually wanted, the statue of the omnipresent god should therefore have no real connection to her. Like I stated before, it's not Yae MIKO, and it's not of the original Electro Archon because we've seen her and it looks nothing like her. In fact, it's possible it wasn't even constructed in the place that it's located at. All evidence currently points to the statue having been picked up and moved from somewhere else. The true identity of the statue remains unclear, but I'll take a point for saying that it's not Yae MIKO or the original Electro Archon. Although I do not get a point for suggesting that the statue might be a weapon of the Electro Archon. And I do not get a point for saying that the Electro Archon is using the statue to achieve nirvana. Oh well. But we did end up using the statue against her as the collective ambitions powered us up during our duel with her. Although we weren't the ones who awakened the vision to begin with, the people of Inazuma reclaiming their own sense of hope did that. But point for me still. Hooray! And speaking of visions, I made a few claims about them in the past. Well, 2, in fact, and I got both of them right. First off, I got a cheap point for claiming that Kazuha would awaken his friend's vision. And that obviously did happen, but the cooler point here is that in doing so, Kazuha confirmed a theory from a non-Inazuma related video. The theory that masterless visions are powered solely by the ambition that manifested them and are not unique to the individual. For a very brief moment, Kazuha possessed the exact same ambition as his deceased friend, and that masterless vision recognized it. That means that visions are basically cars and ambitions are like keys. With the right key in your possession, you can drive the right car. I think this has some really cool future implications. Okay, so let's talk about the Electro Archons. Electro Archons, plural, because there are 3, plus 1. Just so we're clear on the start, here's how I'll be referring to each aspect of her, for lack of a better term. So this is the original Electro Archon Ball. I will be calling her Makoto because that is her name. Mikoto died during the Cataclysm, so her sister took her place. Said sister is known as Balzabul, who I will be calling A because that is a much easier name to say. A sealed her spirit inside of a sword since she threw away her body after her sister died, because, you know, A didn't want to die either. That sword is stored within a puppet that has no name but has been labeled as the Shogun puppet, so that's what we'll call it, I guess. Now, keep in mind that the Shogun puppet and A both have very different personalities. The Shogun puppet is single-minded and focused on her programmed pursuit of eternity, while A is more human-ish. A might be able to take over the Shogun puppet at any time, but it's not really her body. Ugh. The whole thing is just a little too confusing. I don't like it. Anyway, the plus 1 is obviously Scaramouche, but we've already talked about him, so we'll ignore him for now. But it's weird to think he's actually like a robot with advanced AI, though. I was not expecting that. And if you're wondering why I say that, it's because he should be made out of the same things as the Shogun puppet, and the Shogun puppet seems to be made out of mechanical parts, if this cutscene is anything more than just metaphorical. But I digress. Now, I made 9 claims about the Electro Archon, and I got 8 of them correct. That's not bad, and not bad at all. First point I will take is for recognizing that Ball could be Baal, but could also be Beelzebub. Kind of feels like I used the wrong equation to get the correct answer, but whatever, I'll take it. I didn't make any claims about there being twins or sisters, though I did claim that the Electro Archon would have a sibling, but I was specifically thinking of Scaramouche when I said that, so no points for me here, especially since Scaramouche is now technically the Electro Archon's son and not sibling, but Now, it's implied through A's monologue that her sister, at the very least, believed in transience as the true form of eternity, and supposedly A agreed with her sister at the time. But after suffering through so much loss, A decides that stasis is the true eternity, which means she's changed her mind, so I'm taking the point for that. And I am also taking a point for correctly suggesting that she suffered from severe anxiety, and a point for saying that she has a deep-seated fear of loss, because I said both of those things. Very proud. I think it goes without saying that I was right in stating that A is not evil. She's just a little apathetic, hiding away inside her puppet, which I also called, by the way, that she was gonna, lock herself in her room, and since she has no body, locking herself away inside of her puppet is the same as locking herself away in her room. Anyway. On a related note, I also remember pointing out that the wording of the Electro gemstone potentially references a completely different body as opposed to that of the Electro Archon. Since A doesn't have a body anymore, technically, the Shogun puppet will have to suffice here, so point for that. But I was wrong in claiming that the figure at the end of the Electro Archon's teaser trailer wasn't the original Electro Archon because, well, it was definitely Makoto. So, no point for me. Sad days. Alright, so checking my list, and the final score for me is 20.5 out of 27. Not too shabby, that's a solid 75-ish%. Although I do feel like this is a little high. In all honesty, I'm a little miffed that I got so many right, because that means that the writing of Genshin is currently really predictable. And I just want to be surprised, god damn it! And I just wasn't. Alright, so full disclosure, I wasn't really the biggest fan of the Archon quest, and it's not for the reasons you're thinking. Yes, it felt a little rushed, and yes, there was far too much needless exposition, but my real issue was that after a while, certain plot points from 2.0 just stopped mattering. Like, in Liyue and Mondstadt, the stories were simpler, so there weren't as many pieces to get derailed. But in Inazuma, there were a lot of plot points and a lot of characters to juggle. I honestly loved how 2.0 set up the situation in Inazuma and how real the war efforts started to feel, but after the first half of the 2.1 Archon quest, Kokomi and Goro effectively stopped mattering altogether. By the end of the quest, their struggle just feels kind of meaningless because they legitimately had no payoff, really. At least in my opinion. Like, what was the point of us being made captain of Swordfish 2? If all we're going to do is just clear out a bunch of Ronin? Why is a tactical genius like Kokomi accepting things from an anonymous sponsor during a war? Why is the poorer nation of Watatsumi struggling only really against the Vision Hunt decree and not as much the Sakoku decree? It seems to me like the lack of trade would be a bigger issue than whether or not someone has visions. The latter just seems like a bigger deal. And sure, Kazuha does show up later on, but Beto dropped off the face of the earth. And, like, even then, Kazuha's timing is so suspiciously convenient that it's barely believable anymore. And while I like Yae Miko well enough, why was half of the Archon quest reduced to us running her errands and executing her plans? Wouldn't it have been cooler if she just gives us some intel to push us in the right direction so we can lead the resistance to victory? The only explanation I can even have at this point for Kazuha's perfect timing is that he is also part of Yae Miko's overall plan, meaning she tipped him off ahead of time. That's literally the only thing that makes sense here. And it's honestly a terrible explanation. You know what would have been a whole lot better and would have tied everything together really nicely? If Kokomi had actually recruited us to lead the army in an all-out assault against the Tenshukaku and the shogunate, back when we first visited her on Watatsumi Island. That could be why we were the head of Swordfish 2. I mean, think about it. Instead of randomly tackling some Ronins and then waiting around for Tepe for days, we could have participated in basic training and seen the soldiers use the delusions, or at least just seen them. Then we could have reported that to Goro. We can still infiltrate the delusion factory, pass out, get rescued by Yae MIKO, and participate in her plan because that would put the resistance in a really bad spot. You know, since we suddenly went missing and we're supposed to be leading the operation. It would also justify us confronting the Shogun and Senora by ourselves because we would be doing it so the resistance doesn't have to. But Kokomi and Goro could still go through with the plan anyway, and also probably use it as an excuse to come looking for us. So, after defeating Senora and leaving the Tenshukaku, we could meet the resistance fighting the soldiers that Sara didn't defeat, and it would have made sense. That small change to the series of events would have tied the entire Archon quest together, and the fact that I have to put this in a random YouTube theory video irritates me because a billion-dollar company should have the writers on staff that know how to do this. But I digress. This is just where my mixed feelings come from. The frustration of having a really great setup and all sorts of interesting moving parts, just to have them wordlessly dropped off a cliff with no warning. Just like the point of A's story quest, but that, A's story quest is a rant for another time. Still, I did have a lot of fun. The cutscenes were excellent, my heart still bleeds for Tepe, and Watatsumi Island is gorgeous. It was also really exciting to see my theories come true, as I was not expecting to be that on point. So, well, let's see if we can keep this up in the future, And let's also hope that MiHoYo listens and takes some notes and maybe doesn't try to have too many moving parts in the next storyline. That would be great. In the meantime, I do have a lot of new information that I've been sorting through, and you can look forward to 2 new videos. One, a deep dive into Scaramouche, and a deep dive into the Traveler. 2 separate videos. So you can look forward to those. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. I would love to hear your thoughts on the latest Archon quest and the version 2.1 update as a whole. Do you love it? Do you hate it? What surprised you? What was your favorite scene? Which of the islands is your favorite? And the correct answer is, of course, Seirai, but you did not hear that from me. Anywho, let me know down in the comments below. Take care, guys, and I will catch you all in the next video. Bye for now.